Hello. I think we're online, and thank you for joining us for our second show on this Saturday afternoon, which is, which date is it today? Is it the 4th of April?
It is indeed.
2020, and once again, Clive, Leviev-Sawyer of the Sofia Globe, sofiaglobe.com, the place to get the facts of what's going on in Bulgaria in English. And once again, a massive congratulations on your enormous audience, and a quick plug to people to check out your Patreon, make a small contribution per month. It's very easy to do, takes a few moments, and needed in this time of crisis because advertising sponsorship seems to have dried up. Wonder why. Okay, so Clive, how are you doing? What's going on in the world?
The story du jour and the story of all time and story that never stops, and have news breaking all the time. Unfortunately today, in quick succession, we had to report 3 deaths reported separately of coronavirus in Bulgaria.
A total of how many now?
Makes a total of 17 as 17. Of the 5 o'clock update, which was half an hour ago. We have a total, and I will look up the numbers, we have a total of 503 confirmed cases since the stats began. 17 deaths, as I mentioned. Happily, 34 people have recovered and been discharged from hospital. 192 in hospital in total at this hour.
Okay.
Quite a number of statistics, and we may add that the official, semi-official estimates are at the moment that the peak will come in about 2 to 3 weeks. And the Prime Minister said rather memorably this morning that we will be in hell.
Oh, gosh.
Quite a prediction to make, because that's predicting that we're going to be in hell happens to coincide with more or less the time that the Orthodox Christians celebrate Easter. So a bit of a sort of unfortunate
your timing. Yes. So, okay, we got some comments from the previous video we did 3 days ago, and thank you for commenting. All comments are welcome. We're not going to censor or and I know these things can be a bit polarizing. On one hand, maybe people want, are for a total lockdown. The other people think it's all a big hoax, and many people more in between. Now, talking of those people who are back in between are very worried about the economy typically. And I'll probably put myself in that category of this complete stop. We've just seen 7 million people recalled for unemployment benefits in the US, the biggest increase they've ever seen in since ever, as far as I can tell. And a key part of employment, thinking of Bulgaria, and the bit that I have some experience of, is, of course, tourism. And we have summer tourism, we have winter tourism, and we have everything in between. We have rural tourism, spa tourism, health tourism, a lot of tourism. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's around about 14% of the GDP as of the 2018 figures. Is that correct, Lyle?
2018 was just below 12%, but bear in mind that it had been rising steadily every year. So I'm sure when we see the 2019 figures, it will certainly be over 12. But 2020 at this point is now anybody's guess. All of the trends of the recent years have now basically they've been destroyed. Tourism Minister said a few weeks ago that tourism has stopped in translation from Bulgarian. That's what she said, and became, I suppose, one of the first tourism ministers in history to actually ban tourism, because she banned excursions. She banned excursions out of Bulgaria, into Bulgaria, within Bulgaria. It's a strange thing for a tourism minister to be doing, but these are very strange times.
So she said, let's talk about what she actually said as a tourism minister, and then let's give maybe some of our over a beer, and you're having a rakia, so cheers everyone. This is craft beer, so nice and murky and crafty, and yours is a rakia, I believe. Yes. Your picture's going a little bit stationary at the time. So what did the tourism minister say exactly, and what should people or shouldn't be doing over the Easter holidays?
Well, over the Easter holidays, we should all be listening to Major General Matevchevsky, who's told people stay at home. If you are celebrating that particular festival, you should be doing it just with the people you normally live with. Don't have a big family gathering. Don't be heading to hotels. And yes, the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, which if anybody doesn't know Bulgaria very well, that most Bulgarians say that they are Orthodox. It's the biggest religious group in the country. But it's also the one that's been keeping its churches or houses of worship open. Everybody else is closed, or they only showing the services streaming. So, there was this thing a couple of weeks ago, last week, that they'd have these church services outdoors instead of indoors. But then when the church came out with its official position, it was not clear if they would even be doing that. But to go back to the whole point, whether or not anybody believes anything about the Easter story, the fact is it's a 4-day long weekend, and
are we losing you there?
Yes, you went offline.
Yes, I've lost you a bit. We're having a few difficulties today, and I've got a bit of noise in the background. Some cooking's going on. It is what it is. We're going to get better at this, guys, so hopefully we'll get better. So I think your point was that the tourism minister is really the minister of no tourism at the moment, and saying not to go anywhere in terms of the Orthodox Church, that really your gathering should be in your own home rather than in the Orthodox Church. I do believe that other faiths have recognised that in Bulgaria and said, stay at home.
Yes, all the others have. They've either closed or they're doing services online. And the public broadcaster this week, by the way, Bulgarian National Television, made extra airtime to enable those other faiths, the Muslims, the Jews, the Roman Catholics, etc., Armenians, to be able to reach their viewers through the public broadcaster, because they're left with more or less no other way to do it. So the series of shows was on stay on television, and they were, talking about their particular beliefs and messages and trying to actually be encouraging, speaking against undue fear and, ways to console people and keep their morale bucked up, which is an important thing to be doing at this time. So that's basically the situation the religious face. But, what I was going to say is, even if you're, a complete atheist or something, you're still going to take advantage normally, in any normal year, of a 4-day long weekend to go somewhere. It's spring, it's a terrific time to travel around Bulgaria ordinarily. But now that's simply not going to happen.
And there's going to be real pain, I think, with the great weather coming up next weekend and the following weeks looking pretty good as well. Late April is a very nice time, usually here in Bulgaria.
Well, speaking of pain, Lance, I have been watching your wry, I suppose, dark humor about the fantastic conditions at Bansko at the moment for skiing. Apart from the fact that,
we
sore point.
Yeah, it is a sore point. We have a penchant for self-torture. People do it actually anyway in a good year, because, and I do know this from our regular clients, you go on a ski trip and you just can't help. You've got back home and you just want to see, is it good now I've gone? Is it better now I've gone, or worse? Or almost actually relive some of the memories as well by looking at the pictures and videos and stuff. But this comes on to an interesting point, talking of tourism. We on the Bansko blog side, we have bookings for transfers, ski hire and lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when it was clear that, people decided not to come or return early, we refunded everybody who wanted to be refunded. And those that said, look, I'm very happy with the credit note, I come 3-4 times in a year, we actually had giving those folks we said thank you, and giving them a little sort of corporate swag when they come next season. But the vast majority of people got a full refund within a few days. So what was interesting for me was the minister here in Bulgaria, tourism minister, wanted to come up with some guidance or scheme for tour operators. Now, remember, we're not a tour, so speaking of myself, I'm not a tour operator, but for tour operators, that they should be giving or encouraging credits rather than refunds. Which is interesting for me. Why would they do that? What are they thinking of?
I think basically the reason that she was trying to do that was to say, all right, hand out a voucher, and instead of going on the holiday you were booked on, you can take some other holiday later on. And I think the reason that she was saying, please don't ask the operators for refunds, is she wants to keep them solvent. And she can't think of any other way to do it. And Lance, a question for you: what would you do? How would you deal with that if you were the minister?
Look, it's none of the minister's business.
Mm-hmm.
People run a tour company or any business, whether supplying craft beer. It's up to them and their market to price it, to deliver the supply that they want to market it in the way they want to. This is called the pricing mechanism. And part of that mechanism is also terms and conditions. And we should all have the freedom to do what we think is right. So happens, ourselves, we think the right thing was to give a full 100% refund. In fact, our clients made a bit of profit because the euro had strengthened in the meantime. So when they got back their euros, and many of the clients who were using UK pounds actually made a small profit on the exchange rate. But that's fine. We just think how you deal things in a crisis defines you, and that you should run a business every business should with a cushion to deal with unexpected things, which in a ski related or winter tourism could be too high temperatures to make snow, etc. This sort of thing. Ski resorts, there were 3 seasons that failed in the early 80s, 81, 82, 83, for example, before we'd heard of global warming or global climate change. And, this is the nature of business, to have a cushion that you can survive. But we also offer a refund if the gondola has to close due to lack of snow, as well. So we want to give people confidence that they're safe booking. We've been doing it for 11 years, so people come back and they can trust us. So we think that's good marketing, actually. And we also did for volcanic ash as well when that came. Remember that?
I remember that very well.
So we gave 100% refunds for that. And so these crises that come up, I think they define a business. They define yourself and a business. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying everyone should do that.
Still on the role of the state.
Yes.
In as much as the minister is come up with this idea, we'll see to what extent it's implemented. You also know, Sophie Globe reported it a few weeks ago, that right at I don't know how you define the start of this crisis, but the impact was really being felt before there were any confirmed cases. The tourism people were going to the government and saying, we want tax breaks. We want the law changed so that we don't have to pay our bank loans and so forth for months, if not years. So, it's one thing to talk about, is it appropriate for the state to be giving these ideas or proposals? But it's also, business goes running as now, by the way, yesterday, in the broader context, it was something like, I think, 11 chambers of commerce in Bulgaria representing various, the Americans, the Brits and so forth, have gone to the government with all the things that they want the government to do, a lot of which it also involves not paying taxes, not paying municipal taxes, not paying loans, interest-free credit for SMEs, all kinds of things. So it kind of cuts both ways, you know.
So everyone wants some free money, of course, I guess, and they're going to campaign hard for that. So
crisis or no crisis, you know,
exactly.
who wants to pay tax? Who looks forward to paying tax? Who else would like some kind of penalty-free, never-ending moratorium on paying your bank loan?
Yeah. So it's looking increasingly clear, and this is just an opinion, so not related to any fact. From my perspective, it seems like everyone wants some free money. It seems like many governments are firing up the printing presses and maybe not giving helicopter money, but just distributing cash, usually to their friends. It seems in some of the big corporates, the airlines, who would often be very difficult to deal with, frankly. And then the second things don't go their way, they're screaming insolvency, etc. And we saw it with the banks in 2008. Now we're seeing it with the travel industry and every other industry, it seems. It's just, for me personally, it's nonsense. It's there has to be some more responsibility, and for businesses as well as individuals, but businesses need to be able to have cash flow and be valued accordingly, that they can survive some events that happen from time to time, and especially the travel industry, because this isn't the first time, as I said, with the volcanic ash situation. It was terrible. And these airlines were busy buying up their own shares to pump up their own bonuses, pay themselves an awful lot of money. They get the money from the government. They fire the employees. There's something not quite sitting right with
in
many
the state
people.
of Denmark. No, I mean, you've mentioned the global financial crisis of 2008, and we've seen the solutions, and we've had, how many, people go off to Davos and have discussions, and people write academic papers, and people have opinions, and people being elected to public office on their respective policies, whatever the merits or complete lack of them of those policies. That is quite a few years ago for us to learn lessons about how we responded to crisis. And this is a very fast-moving crisis. Obviously, the reasons are different. The reasons are pandemic, not strange work at the crossroads with mortgages and so forth. But we've had time to think about how you respond to this. Internally, after when it's all over, one day it will be over, we'll finish up analyzing which responses were appropriate and which weren't. Because we're talking about, a Tweedledee and Tweedledum of crises. One is Tweedledee is the actual health crisis, medical crisis. The second crisis, which may be in terms of long-term impact, arguably much worse, is the economic one.
I think few people would disagree. Obviously, it's important to save lives. And this is difficult, isn't it? Because I do speak to some people, and they, as I said earlier, and someone's put it in the comments, it's all a hoax. Where are the people really dying? Well, they are. And also, I'd say, what would you do if you were running a country? If you were boycott here in Bulgaria, or Trump in the US, or any leader right now, what's the right thing to do? I don't think it's easy, actually. Do you put controls to stop people do things like in the war, you had a curfew? That was considered, everyone bought into that. So you did change the rules. And people don't like that. And they especially don't like it when the rules don't get changed back when the crisis ends. And I think this is one of the issues now, maybe with health certificates, a sort of creeping ID thing that could happen in the United Kingdom, because there are no ID cards. Watch out. Some of those liberties that were hard fought for could be at risk if once the crisis is gone. I think that's my point. Let's be careful.
Well, I mean, two points on the political front. One, the thing about calling it a hoax has the fundamental problem of practically all conspiracy theories is it is in absolutely nobody's interest to wreck the global economy. Business and everybody else, employees, employers, all like a stable economic environment that is full of growth because everyone benefits from that. Nobody actually likes a crisis. Nobody has an interest in generating one, and nobody has an interest in all the facts that we can see, including, by the way, we can talk about some point those industries that are taking on employees rather than letting them go. Apart from those delivering wine, I saw in the UK there was a new demand for staff at undertakers, which is an extraordinary prospect suddenly, that undertakers are being a bit hard-pressed because of the number of people dying. As to how governments respond, yes, certainly, the first thing is all the debates that we've seen about the health measures, about imposing social distancing, lockdowns, etc., and also the various levels of response. The EU, for example, yesterday said, right, we're lifting import tariffs, as in suspending them, so that nobody misunderstands the meaning of lifting, import tariffs on protective equipment and medical supplies, because, as noble as many people are being in this crisis, those volunteering, etc., at hospitals, doing various things to help people in trouble. We have, unfortunately not in Bulgaria, but certainly elsewhere, a lot of profiteering and speculating going on with protective equipment in particular. So, that's another side of how business is done, as people who want to profiteer out of this. Profiteer in the sense of the word that was used in World War II, where I believe at the time they shot them. I'm against the death penalty, so I won't go down that route at all.
No, that's right. Well, at the same token, you need a price mechanism. If something's expensive, then of course the suppliers will quickly come in and fill that gap. That's a signal to the market that you need to now go off and produce more masks. And maybe that some of the restrictions, and I'm not an expert in this at all, has been some of the, one could argue, possibly over restrictive regulations to prevent competition, because quite often regulations are put in by people who want to keep the market more closed, and so they have more control over the price. But that's not something I have any particular. I think my only point there was in Bulgaria, where they were trying to cap prices increases by 20%, and I think some some chemists, pharmacists, were fined for charging
excessively.
Excessively.
That's been a very big issue because with the price caps, the first version in the original version of the state of emergency related legislation, the supermarkets complained. They have an organization that represents them. It's the Modern Trade Organization, sort of a strange name, but it represents most of the major supermarkets in this country, including the foreign-owned ones, because they're practically all foreign-owned. And they said, look, this is all very well for you to tell us that we can't put up the price of stuff, but we in turn are having to pay high prices to our suppliers because of all the, disruption of transport, difficulties, etc., etc.
Exactly.
So a very tricky one. However, my colleague pointed out that one of the supermarkets, we won't mention the name, that was complaining about having to pay higher prices to his suppliers at the time it was making this complaint, had vast discounts on a number of basic goods. So which is it? Are you having to pay higher prices and you don't want price caps, but yet at the same time you're actually cutting the price of a lot of the stuff that you're selling?
Yes, absolutely. And you've got to allow people to pass on price increases. For example, some of the exotic fruits that come in from South America, South Africa, and Australia right now, because of the restrictions on travel or more expensive flights and this sort of thing, the price is going to go up of out-of-seasonal fruits. That's fine. I mean, that's just a function. Just don't buy it if the price goes up too much. So I I don't think people should be complaining or stopping price rises, because that's a function of what's actually happening. It will reduce the demand pretty quickly.
Well,
you're charging too much for a melon from Argentina.
This week there is actually a state body that is in charge of tracking prices of all kinds of things, from flour to cooking oil to whatever, legumes or something. And they basically said that in Bulgaria prices were more or less stable. There was very little increase in most of the basics. And there were a couple of things that had gone up. And yes, you've just mentioned fruit imports from non-EU countries. Just by the way, between brackets, all the bans on air travel and transport do not apply to transport delivering food. So there's no real reason for it to actually be disrupted. And the other thing that was going up was the price of lemons. Which I don't know if that's because people are circulating things on Facebook about how if you mix lemons and liqueur or something, whatever it was, that cures coronavirus. So perhaps there's some new demand for lemons. Or perhaps, just a lot of people are now sitting at home having gin and tonic and watching things on Netflix. I don't
hoping.
I take it you saw this morning, by the way, that the wine industry in the UK is doing extremely well.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I saw it was reported by Bulgarian National Radio. Apparently, a significant increase in the volume of sales. People who are sitting at home and getting into a especially relaxed condition in the face of the crisis.
Absolutely. I do know people have been. I've had a few conference calls, if you like, with friends for the last 2 evenings, and people have been opening up bottles of wine, ordering from apps like Vivino and so forth, the Wine Society. So yes, that doesn't surprise me at all.
I find it quite believable.
Quite believable, and this is where we'll see structural changes in many businesses. And things like this, we're using a program called whereby.com. And relatively lot smaller than Zoom, which I'm very pleased that Elon Musk realizes a bit of a scammy thing, and has banned its use in his company. He understands tech a bit. And so, yes, I do use Zoom on a business front, but I prefer to pay independent developers for more friendly software. Sorry, that's a little rant. So Whereby is what I use and pay for. But I think this whole issue of changing industries is an interesting one. When the crisis finishes, will companies rush to buy more commercial real estate to put their staff in? Well, the problem is some of their competitors will have a lower cost base because they'll keep more of the staff to work at home, maybe 2-3 days a week, or maybe all the time, or just come in the office 1 day a week, and this sort of thing. So I think these things have changed forever. I think it's pushed the internet ahead by at least 5 years. Use of the internet. So I have a technology company. So we've been doing this for years. Actually, we've never been in the office, maybe 1 day a week at most. And people like the flexibility. Some people like the flexibility of working at home, so they can get all these deliveries, bringing their wine and their shopping focus. Food shopping is absolutely booming. If you're watching this in the UK, you'll know companies, all the supermarket groups, you can barely get a delivery slot at all. They're totally overwhelmed. Amazon's just taken on an extra 100,000 people globally to do deliveries. So we'll see. And we'll be reporting on some of these changes in Bulgaria. I think one change you saw was how Parliament can actually meet, or some of the government systems can work, where previously they said never in a month of Sundays could we ever change. And then the crisis comes, they do it.
A point I'd like to make is now we've seen, for example, European Council meetings, Council of the EU meetings. Everybody's sitting at their desk in their respective capital city or government office, wherever, and they're doing all the meetings that they used to do by flying to Brussels or Luxembourg or wherever, or the whichever country had the rotating presidency, the EU, and now doing it virtually. So they're not traveling to the airport in an official car. They're not getting onto the plane at taxpayers' expense. But they're doing all the same things, and they're doing it in conditions of crisis. So, rapid decisions. And when, as I keep on saying, when this crisis is over, however long that takes, now that we have all the evidence that you can use tech to get these things done, and it's good for costs, and it's, of course, good for environment, carbon footprint and all that, they can have a hard time explaining why it's necessary for them, again, to be flying off 27 of them, for example, at a time to go and have their meetings face-to-face. Somebody now tell me why that's necessary.
Well, some people may tell you why you need Brussels at all. A conversation for another day.
Yeah, I'm very pro-EU and very pro-European, so we can have that conversation some other time.
We'll get
rumors of the demise of the EU, as a very good friend of mine said this morning on radio, are highly exaggerated. At least I hope they are. But yeah, Lance, speaking of apps, and I know you have a very professional app company, you may have seen us report today that the government is putting out an app, can't remember what it's called, Sure something or another, and people would be able to participate voluntarily, upload their health status, their location, etc., etc., and the notion of this app, which is apparently based on work that's been done in South Korea and Thailand and Japan, is to create this big database which would help the national operational staff. We'll see how many people are willing to download it and to participate in this project. And of course, naturally, as you could imagine, social networks, immediately people were saying, aha, this is another way to spy on us. Because, you cannot have any possible development without a conspiracy theory following it at extremely high speed. But it's interesting, and when we speak again and return to the topic of apps, I'd really be interested if you would download and have a look at this app to hear your opinion about it, about its efficacy. But it's again really interesting that possibly we could have developed this app for other uses or other circumstances, but it's now, again, it's something being done very rapidly. I hope it does have a beneficial effect. I hope it works properly. But
okay, I'll give you a view on that.
Yeah.
We all carry around, or most of us carry around a smartphone. So if they want, they've got a lot of information. And some countries have introduced legislation to allow tracking. They've actually admitted to it. We know it's always been possible, but they've actually said, because of the crisis, we now need to, but not putting a date when they would need to get some special permissions to be able to access that data. But the problem is that word data, and we've seen it with all companies over the last 20 years, is that data can be hackable. And of course, you will know the story very well, Clive, of many, I'm talking millions of Bulgarians who had their data was hacked into, and I think that was sold or rumoured to be sold on the dark web, but that would have included a first name, a second name, an email address, a password. So these were tax records, I believe, but you correct me if I'm wrong. But what I'm saying is that all this data is you've got to assume it will be hacked at some stage, or it'll be leaked in some way. And of course, it depends who gets their hands on this information. And that could be used for nefarious purposes. So if someone took a dislike to a certain section of the population who may be into something that the authorities don't like, there could be a mass censorship event going on. And, we don't want a repetition of the horrendous events going back in the early mid last century. So,
I would say I sincerely hope that the app is secure, because
they can't be. Nothing. It can never be secure. That's a fact. Yeah, it can never be secure. It can never be secure.
Is Europol, the European Police Cooperation Agency, saying this week that there's been an increase in crime of various kinds, but particularly in the context of COVID-19 coronavirus, and especially, of course, phone frauds. People phoning up people and sort of, finding various scams. I don't know what they are. I don't have a criminal mind. Or that's at least what I tell everybody. Exploiting people's vulnerability about, I have supplies of this, I have supplies of that. Again, between brackets, I do regularly check my spam folder at least once a day just to see that there's nothing in there that isn't actually spam. And I've been very amused, but not surprised, to see that basically 90% of the spam I get is offering to sell my company surgical masks from real or fictitious companies in China or elsewhere, periodically India. So, Europol's pointed out that, like with all circumstances, the criminal world is very agile, and it responds to circumstances very quickly. Again, I was interested to see that the Interior Ministry of Bulgaria is saying that, in contrast, street crime in Bulgaria is vastly down because there's so many police going around trying to discourage people from gathering in ways that they shouldn't, etc., etc., to make sure that all the physical distancing be kept to and the bans on the parks. That apparently street crime has kind of virtually disappeared. Burglaries are down because everybody's at home, and
maybe domestic abuse will be up.
That is a genuine.
We've just lost Clive. I'm really sorry. We're having a few technical issues. It's down to the internet. I think there's a lot of strain on the internet these days. People doing stuff.
Keep in touch. Virtually. A lot of the stuff is being made up on the go. There was a point that the Labour Inspectorate said that they would stop inspections because trying to reduce person-to-person contact. But now in turn they've had to pivot from that position because, again, you would have seen, we did report on South Globe yesterday, there's been this 50% increase.
Oh, Clive, we've lost you. I'm really sorry, folks. We're losing you. Yeah, I think we've got the message reference crime on the streets. And deaths, of course, are down on road accidents, 25 a year, of course. And maybe the world needs to, well, it is trying to, I guess, with electric, more autonomous driving cars. There's 1.1 million people killed in the world every year on driving, and then obviously many, many more accidents. So but that said, we're going to have to recap because we're slightly overrun. Is that we've got? There's so many topics here to discuss. I know everyone's sort of kind of thinking about them. We're giving a perspective from Bulgaria. And, we're trying to, so the Sofia Globe is giving the facts, and on these shows we're maybe giving some of our personal opinions and interpretations of what's going on. But I think the tourism bit, which is where we've been majoring on today, is a fascinating area with, as of 2018, 12% of the GDP reliant on tourism. And this is, has gone to zero pretty much from around, the 10th, 12th of March, let's say. And it's looking like the summer will be very severely affected too. And we'll keep an eye on this one and the regulations. We've got more to talk about next time about the regulations on staff and payment of salaries if you own a business here. Let's clarify that for people on another call. If you've got some comments, though, please put them down below. We're not going to censor them as long as it's discussion about legal things and family friendly. Please put the comments down below. Let us know what you want to hear about. If you're an expert in any particular area, then let us know and come and join us on our regular chats here. Clive, Sofia Globe, you're super busy. You've got over 20,000 people a day coming to your site. I'm going to have to let you go because I know there's more news coming in very soon, I think. Anything else for readers to say? At Twitter, at the Sofia Globe. See Clive there. You'll see more from me at Bansko on Twitter. And, of course, the Facebook and the Instagrams and the YouTube channel. We really, really encourage you, please, 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 to subscribe, hit that notification bell, wherever it is down there, and check out the Patreon link to help the Globe give independent journalism. This is totally independent. Not everyone realises this. Like myself, on the Bansko side, it's independent. Clive, independent. There is no support from anyone else, except from you, dear viewers. So, Clive, anything else just to say? Cheers, I think. Na zdrowie. And we've frozen at the end. Let's see. Okay, it looks like the internet has got the better of us. Okay. Okay, he's got a problem with sound. I'm going to say goodbye and thank you so